In the last 48 hours, three major stories have broken, and this comes less than a week before planned mass protests in Washington, D.C. Internal Pentagon memos revealed orders for National Guard quick reaction forces in every U.S. state. The Trump administration has launched a recruitment drive for federal law enforcement in the Capitol. And The Atlantic has disclosed that at least six senior administration officials have relocated to military housing over recent months. The timing has raised questions. Let's walk through what we know. On Tuesday and Wednesday, the Wall Street Journal and Washington Post reported on internal War Department memos showing an accelerated timeline for creating specialized National Guard units trained in riot control and civil disturbance response. These units must be at full operational capacity by January 1. According to the memos, each state and territorial National Guard will contribute up to 500 soldiers to these new quick reaction forces. That's approximately 23,500 troops nationwide. They'll receive specialized training in crowd control tactics, detainee handling, and the use of non lethal equipment, including batons, stun guns, and body shields. The readiness requirements are significant. 25% of each unit must be able to deploy within hours, 50% within 12 hours, and full mobilization within 24 hours. War Secretary Pete Hegseth issued the initial directive back on September 24th, ordering formation of what he called the National Guard Response Force for rapid mobilizations as the circumstances require. His memo stated that the Department of War will be prepared to immediately provide support to federal, state, and local law enforcement to address threats of civil disturbance. This followed an August executive order from President Trump directing Hegseth to create those specialized forces. Now, this isn't happening in a vacuum. More than 2,500 Guard members have been patrolling Washington, D.C. since August under a federally declared crime emergency. National Guard units began joint patrols in Memphis earlier this month. Deployments to Chicago and Portland remain pending due to legal challenges. On October 29th, the same day these Pentagon memos became public, the Trump administration launched a new government website to recruit federal law enforcement officers to police Washington, D.C. According to Reuters, the website advertises positions at the DEA, ICE, and U.S. Park Police. The new hires will be stationed in the nation's capital for up to 1 year. White House spokesperson Taylor Rogers told Reuters the administration is seeking highly qualified and specifically trained individuals. The timing is notable. Why launch a recruitment website for DC law enforcement on the same day internal military preparation orders leak to the press? Then, on Thursday, The Atlantic revealed that at least six top Trump administration officials have moved into military housing in the Washington area over recent months, citing escalating security threats. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and War Secretary Pete Hegseth now both reside on General's Row at Fort McNair, an Army installation with historic residences traditionally reserved for senior military commanders. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll moved to Fort Myer Henderson Hall. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who relocated in August, occupies military housing in Washington typically designated for the Coast Guard Commandant. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller also relocated to military housing in September after sustained protests outside his Arlington home, including confrontations and wanted posters with his address posted on utility poles. Noem reportedly moved after the Daily Mail published details about her apartment's address. A DHS spokesperson said she had been horribly doxxed and targeted to the point where she was no longer able to safely live in her own apartment. The security concerns are not unfounded. The threat environment facing federal officials is documented. Homeland Security Secretary Noem stated that ICE has seen an 8,000% surge in death threats against its personnel. You'll remember on September 10th, conservative voice Charlie Kirk was assassinated while speaking at Utah Valley University. Utah Governor Spencer Cox described it as a political assassination, noting the suspect had been influenced by leftist ideology. Kirk's assassination was the latest in a disturbing series of political violence in 2025. In June, Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband were shot and killed at their home. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's residence was targeted in an April arson attack. 2 Israeli embassy staffers were killed in Washington, D.C. in May. The violence has been bipartisan and widespread. Which brings us to November 5th, this Tuesday. That's when Refuse Fascism, an organization created by the Revolutionary Communist Party, you heard that right, has organized demonstrations in Washington. Here's what their website says. They want to drive the Trump administration from power through nonviolent protests. They're calling on people to flood D.C., surround the White House, surround the Capitol, and surround the Supreme Court. And they want protests to come back again and again until, in their words, they grind the machinery of the fascist regime to a halt. The group's founder has said plainly, "We need a revolution. Anything else is bullshit." The Revolutionary Communist Party has even published proposed constitution for what they call the new socialist republic in North America, describing it as a communist dictatorship led by their party. They're planning a rally at 11 a.m. Tuesday at the Washington Monument, with calls for a sustained presence in the Capitol. General Flynn saw a post about the planned demonstrations and warned, "This is an actual insurrection. I pray that people inside the Trump administration are paying attention."
So earlier today, we got some information that said that things are so bad in Washington, D.C., that Democrat leaders aren't talking to anybody. They're not talking to their caucus. They're not talking to Republicans. They're not talking to anybody. And I think now we know why. I'm going to show you 2 clips. The first one is going to help you understand what they're terrified of. And the second one is going to help you understand why they're not budging and why they fully intend on seeing SNAP benefits completely eliminated, at least for the month of November. They need people in the streets.
A friend just said she'd be happy if I died. So listen up, Democratic establishment. You can either jump on board with this shit, or we're coming after you in the same way that we come after MAGA. Period.
There you go. That is one of the biggest podcasters on the radical left that exists today, a woman by the name of Jennifer Welch. And her show, her opinions are disgusting. And there you have it. She is threatening the Democrats that unless they get on board with the attitude that it is okay to assassinate your political opponents, they're coming after them next. The other piece of this that you have to understand is that the Democrats have no intention on moving at all on the government shutdown until they get enough people that are hungry and angry and are willing to get into the streets. You see, a few weeks ago, when the No Kings protest failed so spectacularly to get the numbers and the diversity that they needed into the streets to justify the $300 million that they spent, it sucked so much oxygen out of the room that most people weren't paying attention to the fact that there's another set of protests scheduled to start on November 5th, this time by an organization called Refuse Fascism that was started by a guy that considers himself a revolutionary communist. And we have some leaked audio from a planning session to help you understand exactly what they're planning starting November 5th and why they need people so riled up and angry to get there.
This needs to be what happens right now. Organizing millions of people to get to Washington, D.C., stand and surround the White House, surround the Capitol building, surround the illegitimate fascist Supreme Court, and not stop until the Trump regime is driven from power. We start on the 5th, we go to the 6th, we go to the 7th, we go to the 8th. We keep pushing every day, building and growing our numbers until the masses of people are standing around the White House, around the Capitol building, around this fascist and Supreme Court, until we drive the Trump fascist regime from power.
They have planned an event to start on the 1-year anniversary of Donald Trump's re-election, and they think that if they allow this government shutdown to continue, enough people will be so upset and hungry that they'll join them in surrounding the White House, the Capitol, and the Supreme Court until they force the Trump administration to leave. This, folks, is an actual insurrection. This, folks, is an actual sedition. Folks, this is what the beginning of a violent revolution looks like.
So here's what we have. In 48 hours, the public has learned that the Pentagon has ordered every state to prepare civil disturbance forces operational by January 1st. That the administration launched a recruitment drive for additional federal law enforcement in D.C. That top administration officials relocated to military installations over recent months due to documented security threats. And that organized groups are planning what they describe as sustained resistance beginning Tuesday, aimed at forcing out a duly elected president from power. All of this information came to light less than a week before those planned demonstrations. Whether this represents prudent security planning, concerning escalation, or both, I guess depends on your perspective. But what's undeniable is the timing. As of now, there's been no additional public comment from the White House regarding specific security preparations for November 5th. The D.C. Metropolitan Police and National Guard Bureau have not announced enhanced security protocols, though thousands of Guard members are already deployed to the Capitol. What happens in the next few days will tell us whether these preparations were necessary or whether their disclosure becomes part of the story itself. Will President Trump enact the Insurrection Act? It's looking more and more possible day by day.